Chris Lee and Blake Lovell here from Southeastern 14. 4 games in the books as we do this on Saturday afternoon. And Blake, let's start in Auburn where the Tigers are the champions of the Southeastern Conference.
Yep, they are, and 27-4 on the season, 15-3 in the SEC, and we kept talking about it, and I know there have been people that have at times, and I don't know if it's just not watching everything we do, but which is fine. I get it. Everyone doesn't have time to watch every single thing we do, but I think a lot of the talk has been about just sort of the pushing of Auburn's struggles. Again, I'm going to make sure I'm using the sarcastic quotes here. The struggles on the road. But once again, I have not been kind of in that group. I've always said I think you have to look at the full picture here and understand that this is still a team heading into this game against South Carolina that was 26-4, 14-3 in the SEC. Now they finished 27-4, 15-3 in the SEC. And I'm not going to find a lot of disappointment in that. And I'm not going to knock a team for being that good throughout the stretch of a 31-game season. So start to finish here, they're the champions in one of the best years the league has had in a long time. So that, to me, says everything. And, this game itself, it was just kind of what you expected. Just kind of a game that just goes along, and you never really feel like South Carolina's going to win the game at all. I know they, tried to make a push late, but it was never in doubt. And once again, Jabari Smith was the best player on the floor, and that's what Bruce Pearl said after the game. Most nights that's going to be the case, and he was again here. And not a lot to add on this specific game because, as we're going to talk about, there was so much going on elsewhere while this game is going on. And, I'm trying to juggle 3 games at one time. Usually you can usually do a pretty good job of 2 at a time, right? Because it's like, all right, we'll put one here. But like in terms of the importance, it's usually you can just pick 2 and go. But like today, we had to focus like on 3 at a time. And for one reason is because this Arkansas-Tennessee game, I joked on Twitter. I said, Indiana and Purdue's freshmen are going to be seniors by the time this Arkansas and Tennessee game is over, because that was the game that was just waiting and waiting and waiting for this one to be over. But we'll get to that one in a second. But, yeah, Auburn's the champs, and they deserved it. And, my opinion on Auburn hasn't changed, but if you watched our videos, you should know that by now.
Yeah, I mean, Auburn had a 17-point lead at half, and what we do, we're rarely in a situation like there are times where there might be 2 games at once, and I think as people know, I'm sitting watching 2 TVs and sometimes a laptop at once, but your attention can only go so many places. So when Auburn's up 17 at half, you just kind of figure this one's probably over. I did tune it in the last 5 minutes or so as Auburn made it a little closer than it should have, but I think we all figured Auburn would win, which it did. Now, I'll tell you what. The Must Bus went into Knoxville, and Vol Nation just slashed the tires, broke the windows, raided the bus, stole all the corn nuts and zero bars, maybe the women and children too, and then took out, whatever was in the DVD box and then replaced it with the Crying Game or something like that. I mean, it was ugly the first half. I think it was 50-29 at the half. And then we're watching LSU and Alabama, which was interesting pretty much from start to finish.
Oh, definitely towards the finish. When we
we'll
get
to that. But we're watching, and like I'm watching LSU Alabama because that's the one that's going to go down to the wire. And suddenly Arkansas it gets to 10 or 12 and they can't close, and finally in the last couple minutes they get close. JD Note's got a shot to tie and can't do it, but my goodness, Tennessee, the first half, Tennessee was 9 of 12 from 3. I mean, just everybody's hitting. It's the quintessential when it all goes right for Tennessee game in the first half, and Tennessee had just enough at the end to hold on.
Yeah, they did. And by the way, just so we know, so everyone watching knows that this video will not be as long as our others because usually, we have all the games in front of us, and we'll go more in depth into some of this stuff now that we start to look ahead to the tournament. But this game, it was one of those that, like, initially you're just thinking, okay, for starters, I mean, it has to be said, like, Audi's Tony not playing, I think that was a huge thing for Arkansas because we've talked about him, right? Like elite defender, and Tennessee absolutely took advantage of that because when he's not out there on the floor and you look around and you're thinking, "Uh-oh, like if Tennessee's making shots, look out." And they did. Like you said, I think they started 9 of 11, 9 of 12 from 3. Um I mean, it was on. I mean, they were not missing, and it comes back to what we talked about with Tennessee. I've said those 4 guards, right? And if you want, I think you can still put Josiah Jordan James as a guard. I mean, he plays like any position he wants, but those guys, Vescovy, Chandler, Ziegler, James. If those 4 guys are on, I don't think you're going to beat Tennessee. I mean, it's just I mean, that is why they are where they are right now. And they showed the clip of Rick Barnes saying, "Hey, we're national championship good." If those 4 guys are playing like that and they play to their ability, now I know, second half's a little bit different because they turn the ball over a little bit and those kind of things. But you're going up against a desperate Arkansas team at that point that's just basically trying everything they can to get back into that game. But when those 4 guys like that are doing what they can do, I'm telling you, you got to watch out for this team. Now, I think the one thing we will talk about with Tennessee moving forward is, that front court situation without Kamwa and wondering, can you still get good production? And I thought they still got that here from, Huntley Atfield. I said maybe he's kind of that X factor. I mean, he plays 18 minutes in this game, scores 7 points, grabs 4 rebounds, but like there's value in that. Who was it? Was it Plavsic that right off the bat goes to Jalen Williams, gets that foul right from the get go? I think that's right. Um, and those are the kind of things because Williams was, I mean, this was the first game that he was kind of felt like a non-factor a lot of the game, and so that is another credit to Tennessee for the ability to do that. So this was yeah, I mean, again, we pretty much said it's almost a given now that these teams are going to win at home, but man, Tennessee was not leaving any doubt, at least in that first portion of the game. And yes, then it starts to change a bit because I just think it's like the law of averages, right? Like I don't think you're going to see Tennessee wind up winning that game by 30. Arkansas is going to make a run at some point, and to be there with a chance, right? I mean they're there
Yeah.
with a shot to tie the game or maybe even win. It's just I was thinking if Arkansas wins this thing, like we said before, like I don't know who's going to beat them at that point. Like go ahead and put them in the national championship because if they would have found a way to win that game after the way Tennessee played, my goodness. But it was not to be. Tennessee gets the win. They deserved it. Played really well, and yeah, I mean I guess I come out of this still impressed with Tennessee. I mean, it just to me it just adds another impressive game to their resume. And again, I'm always impressed when I see those 4 guys that we talked about play the way that they do. Does my opinion of Arkansas change? Not really, because it's not their full team out there. And without Tony, like we said, think about what Tony did in that Kentucky game, which we talked about before. Um, those are the kind of things that, and I know, if you're a fan base, right, and we've seen this many times, you're like, we just want to lose one eventually, just get it out of the way. Maybe this was the get it out of the way game for Arkansas, perhaps. But I don't think my opinion on Arkansas changes much either coming out of this one. This was the score line wound up being what we expected. The game did not play out as we would have expected, but again, I think there were circumstances surrounding that. But both Tennessee hitting shots, Tony maybe not being out there, so a lot of different factors. But at the end of the day, you got to give credit to Tennessee, and yeah, I think it's just balls have been really good over the last little while. So.
Well, and forgive me, Tennessee fans, you follow your team closer than I do because we're following 14 teams, and so you're going to catch things that I don't. But the way that I see it when I watch them and I look at the box scores, since the Kumai injury, I think about that time Josiah Jordan James has really stepped up his game a lot. We've talked about how Ziegler has become a more active part of what they do, but they've got 8 or 9 guys, Blake, that any night can play really well. Vescovy's been one of the most consistent guys in the league and one of the best. We've talked about what Kennedy Chandler can do today. He hits 5 of 6 from 3. You mentioned Huntley Hatfield a bit. Plavsic has been good in bits. John Fulkerson is in a great role. where he's coming off the bench and can contribute big on some nights. I still remember the Arizona game where he got like 24 points. You still got Victor Bailey out there in break glass in case of emergency territory. He was a nice player at Oregon, was a nice player for them at times last year. See, I think that's what makes him tough. I know in March sometimes it's about having your go-to guard or whatever, and your star wins games. Steph Curry, one that comes to mind. And we could mention a lot of other names, but the point is with Tennessee, there's so many guys. I mean, I don't know. There's probably 6 guys that can lead them in scoring in a given game against a good team, and I think that's what's going to make them tough. It's one end, it's defense on one end, but on the other end, it's the fact that they're just so versatile right now.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing is like, and I've said it before, like even someone like John Fulkerson doesn't have to play 25 minutes, right? But he's still going to give you something, and we've seen like Adu, right? We've talked about how he's kind of come on here recently. He plays 19 minutes in this game. Just that. Also, it's really kind of that group of 4 too. Whether Huntley Hatfield, Plavsic, Fulkerson, Adu, all those guys play between 12 and 19 minutes in this game. So I think they are. You even got Justin Powell, right? Someone who can come in and maybe hit some shots. And Victor Bailey, he kind of had that breakout game not long ago, didn't he? Where he just kind of somebody just came out of nowhere and had another big game. So they've got options. There's no doubt about it. So it's again, that first half was as good as you could have asked for Tennessee, and that's what puts you in a position to be able to hold off Arkansas the way that they did. And now still, I mean, just now you turn your attention forward, and I think for Tennessee, you feel really good about the way your team's playing right now. Rick Barnes has got to just love the confidence they're playing with. And I mean, I said it right. Like they scored more points in the first half in this game than they did in the entire game at Arkansas. I mean, they scored 50 at half. They scored 48 at Arkansas, and that lost 58-48. So just one of those kind of games where when you start the way they did from 3, and I think that's just, you're not going to lose many games like that. And even though Arkansas had a chance, and I know, there'll probably be Arkansas fans that are frustrated with Note on a couple of those plays, but once again, I mean, Note is their guy, and whose hands the ball is going to be in, and sometimes you can make plays, sometimes you don't, and that's just kind of what it came down to there, I think. So,
my 8-year-old son watches a lot of basketball with me, and I swear to God, this actually happened just the way I'm about to tell you. He looks up in the TV in the first half where Arkansas is just getting run off the floor. Says, "Dad, why is Arkansas losing by so many points?" And he pauses. He says, "Oh, they're not playing at home." And I just thought that's so funny. That just encapsulates between what you said and what he said, just the way it's been in the SEC for these home teams this year.
And say replace
even
Arkansas
an 8-year-old
with
can notice
Kentucky. Yeah, replace Arkansas with Kentucky, Tennessee, Auburn. It's just, I mean, but as we know, I mean, some of those teams have one more on the road than the others. But it's just it's one of those things. And by the way, if you keep seeing me glance, Chris, I held out hope there.
I'm gonna have to turn this back on, aren't I?
No, you're not.
Oh,
there's no reason to, because it's not even a game at this point. I held out hope. I kept pushing that agenda for Georgia to get their second win. And what were they? They were up double digits, I want to say, in this game. But as I'm watching here, there's 5 minutes left. Missouri's all of a sudden up 9, and actually they're about to hit a 3 here. No, then they missed it. I was thinking they're about to go up double digits. But
Georgia was literally up when we started this broadcast.
They're up double digits, I think. Weren't they? Somewhere in there. So
I don't think it was double digits by that point. I think it was double digits and then we messed something up and had to start over brief. I think it was 8 when I turned it off.
Well, look, they got out to a 16-2 lead in this game. They scored 16 points 3.5 minutes into the game, basically. You had a lot more of those this year. It'd be in good shape. But no, they have been up double digits here. They were up 41-30 early in the second half, and then it went to 44-33. So it doesn't look good. But you'll know by the time we finish this video probably if they won or not.
No glory to Georgia today.
Yeah.
It was a sidebar here, and I've forgotten it. But anyway, Alabama LSU was wildly entertaining.
Are they not? Are they still playing? Because from what I saw, they stopped the game with 12 seconds left.
Oh, I'm calling you, and I'm like, can you believe this? I'm like, what have I missed? Have they gone? I mean, there was no excuse for that. First of all, if you don't know what we're talking about,
Then
we're
you
sitting
live in
there
another
watching.
part of the country, probably. I guess I don't know.
Right,
So.
we're sitting there watching Alabama and LSU. Alabama's got the ball with 12 seconds left, I think, with a chance to tie, and literally, they say we're going to the Kentucky game. Then they go to a commercial break. Then they come back on. I think we have a graphic screen for a while. Then they go to Florida, Kentucky. And I'm scrambling. I'm calling Blake. I'm going, where in the world do I see the rest of this game? I check ESPN's game tracker. I look up. It's gone to overtime. And then apparently well, not apparently. They did because we both got it this way. They decided to stream the game. But thumbs down to CBS. You don't do that to everybody at that juncture.
No, that was rough, man.
And you know what it was. Kentucky fans wanted to see their team. I get it, but come on.
I don't even know if it was that. I think they wanted to get the Keontae Johnson thing. Now that I think about it, to be honest with you, I think that's what they wanted. But no matter what, it's just like you better be warning people ahead of time on that kind of stuff, right? Because if it just comes out of nowhere with 12 seconds left, that's going to make a lot of people mad, and it did on Twitter. But what a wild game. We kind of expected that with these two. We always say it seems like when Alabama and LSU play, it's always very entertaining just because of the style both like to play. But you know what? What was the difference? Yet again. The difference was that Alabama just
not good with the ball.
Makes turnovers that they have no business making. They turned it over 21 times in this game. We said that going in. LSU, one of the best in the country at forcing turnovers. And they had Xavier Pinson back here, which didn't score a lot, but they didn't have him in that first meeting. Remember, Alabama won that game. In this game, he goes 8 points, 8 assists, 5 steals, only 2 turnovers, played 39 minutes. He was, a huge part of what they did here. And obviously, we know Days had a big game. Easton, of course. Murray played well. I thought Murray was actually, really good in this one. But you just can't. You can't make the kind of turnovers that Alabama makes and win close games in this league. Not on the road, not at home. It's just there were just so many. You could point at several of them. Whether it's I know, and look, we don't like to call out players or anything, and that's not what we're doing. But we have to point out what happened. The miles when I think it was late in the game, near half court, where it's just kind of that nonchalant bounce to get it out of traffic, and LSU goes and dunks it on the other end, and then. Unfortunately, for Davison at the end there, where the shot clock violation, I think that was coming out of a timeout, right?
Yeah, well, it was coming out of a timeout on Alabama's end of the floor. I can't remember if there was a stoppage. Like Nate Oates is right there. I'm sure he's reminding his guys, "Hey guys, 4 seconds."
Yeah, it's a ball out of bounds situation. No matter
yes,
what.
you have time to reset and say. I mean, your coach is literally standing right there.
And again, who knows? If you don't make the shot, nothing's different. But still, that to me was like one of those things that just adds on to the frustration of you have too many times you've given the ball away. Just that you can look back on and say those were missed opportunities because we should have had this opportunity, to even take a shot, put ourselves in a position. But just the turnovers, that was the difference here. I don't even know what else you say about this game. That to me summed it up. And we knew it was going to be hard for Alabama to win on the road no matter what. But when you turn the ball over 21 times, and it's just not going to happen. But yet, it goes to overtime. You lose by 3. I said it. I keep saying it. I still think, despite all of this, like, I just don't think anyone wants any part of Alabama or LSU in their bracket. Like, I just think these are two teams that when they play well, what they're capable of, right? It's just still there is that unknown with each of them in different areas. For LSU, will the offense sputter? For Alabama, the turnovers, the defense at times. But you see it. You see what they're capable of. It's just if it sometimes it cannot. I mean, really down the stretch there, I thought like both teams were making plays, and I'm just like, oh no, like both these teams are just like, come on, get it together because it's so good game though, entertaining. But just I think for Alabama, you look at it as a missed opportunity here, and again, now you go into the SEC tournament having lost 2 in a row, and mentally, I always think there's something to that. Certainly you wipe the slate clean, but still, I mean, it's just you have not played your best basketball over the past couple games, and so yeah, I'm more curious to see where they wind up. And speaking of where they wind up, boy, Chris, I'm turning back to you for this because
Oh
this
God, my
whole
eyes are
tiebreaker
crossed.
scenario. Well, listen, let's point this out too. By the time you're watching this, some of you will watch this as soon as it comes out. Some of you will watch it later. But the ones who watch it later, you will know exactly where things stand with the tiebreakers and stuff. But my goodness, what a just mess this thing is. At least this tiebreaker with 5-way tiebreak here.
Well, I thought I had it figured out, and then somebody tweeted out something to the contrary. So now I'm sitting there pre-show trying to go through this and figure out who's right, and I'm just like getting more confused the more I look at it. But either way, Alabama and LSU are going to be your 5 or your 6 seed in some order, depending on who wins state. And I think Florida, goodness, I want to say is in the 7-10 game regardless. Just might be 7 or might be 10.
I'm going to look that up while you're doing that.
I wasn't actually finished with the game because that block that Tari Eason had was incredible, first of all, in the 3. That got them, will they get free throws on the other end? They got an open court block of the 3, which he seized, ran down. This is, I think in regulation. Could have been in overtime. It runs together. It was under a minute left of one or the other. But it was just sensational play. He had a stat sheet stuffing day. The thing, though, Blake, I look at the box score, and I'm like, how's Alabama even in this? Shackelford had maybe his worst game of the year. He's 3 of 14. Didn't play a good bit of overtime. They're 11 of 40 from 3. The turnovers, I mean, I guess it's 20 of 22 from the line, but you just look at it and you're like, okay, if you know those things going in, Alabama's not in this game, much less in overtime.
Yeah. But then again, like that has to frustrate you even more. It's like you are right there despite probably not even feeling like you played your best game. Yeah. So I mean, it's just to me, it's like that is probably the perfect, sort of punctuation on Alabama's regular season, just based on that, knowing that you look back, there are so many missed opportunities probably on your schedule. And yet, you still are a team that came into the year with most people thinking you're probably 1 or 2 in the SEC, right? And so I think that talent hasn't gone anywhere. It's just the consistency it's just not there. And so, I until we see the bracket, I reserve all judgment on what I think Alabama's going to do. Because if I see a bracket where I'm like, well, they match up pretty well there, and they're going to get the best teams, so that means they're going to play up to the level of competition, then they got a shot. But, if they get stuck on a part of the bracket where they're playing teams that, just are there to be there, I mean, it's one of those things where you don't know, man. It's gotta be more consistency in the SEC to win games, and that's why they finished 9-9. So, by the way, I want to point this out real quick, just in case we didn't say it. We do know, of course, the top 4, how it's going to factor out. Auburn's the 1, Tennessee's the 2, Kentucky's the 3, and Arkansas is the 4. So, for anyone that was, I don't think that was confusing. If you're watching this, you know that, but just so we're aware. And then I think I don't really know on the Florida situation. I'm looking it up right now. I'm trying to do the math, but there's some people saying they could be the 7 or the 8. I don't know how that plays out, but again, you're probably going to be watching this after we already know, so we are not going to dive too much into that. So,
yeah, I've got it down in front of me, but I think I'll just confuse myself and everybody else if I go through it.
Wait and watch this video at 8:30 or 9 o'clock tonight. Then you'll know it all, and you won't have to worry about it.
And I know Alabama, their fans get frustrated because of the inconsistency. But again, they play the toughest schedule in the country. And one thing you pointed out coming into this game is LSU's great at defending the 3. They're fast, they're quick, they're long, they're athletic. They're all the things that make three-point shooting tough. Alabama still did get some open looks at times in spite of it, but look, everything looks tougher when you're playing the schedule Alabama's playing. And yeah, a lot of other teams probably didn't have their flaws exposed night in and night out like Bama because they're not playing that slate of games.
Yeah, that's true. I think it's just the inexplicable results
Well,
that, that
yeah.
that that stand out more than anything. To be like that to me is what stands out with them is the A&M game is going to, burn a hole in your brain at this point because it's like that's recent, but yet you're still going to think about the Georgia and Missouri games, even though they were a while back. You're still going to think about that. Fair, unfair. You can't ignore it, and then you're going to think about some of these plays at the end of this game against LSU. So I think that's where the frustration comes, and so yeah, I mean we'll see what happens with them, but I still think Alabama and LSU are good enough to go in next week and win the SEC tournament. Are they going to? Probably not. But are they good enough to do it? I think they're talented enough. Both of them are. But it's just, can they put it all together? To this point, consistently, they have not been able to. But I think LSU, there's that caveat, though. Without Pinson, which where a lot of their struggles came. But now they've got him back. I still think they're a team that, with their defense, I would love to play them. So
Oscar Sheboy today was incredible.
yeah, man. I mean, we don't want to give any spoiler alerts here, but we are going to do our all SEC picks here. Probably it'll either be tomorrow or Monday. I mean, spoiler alert, he's going to be the SEC Player of the Year, and there's a reason for that. He's just had a historic season. He's just so good, and I don't know how else to say it. I mean, he is just. I said like early in the season, I'm like, I watch how this guy plays, and it's just. I think what's the word I used? Animalistic. Like it's just like he has just this instinct that is just like I don't even know how to explain it. He is such a good player. So yeah, and again, I know we probably forgot to mention some other things. I'm trying to think of what else stood out, but this is where one of the reasons why we have recorded on Monday is not just scheduling wise too, which that factors in, but I like to go back and watch everything because you can't do it all live, as we know. So but because we're recording right after this, like I haven't had a chance to go back and watch every single second of every game. But there's probably a lot of things that probably just missed because of that. But yeah, what an interesting slate. And again, I'm watching here, 1:15 to go. Missouri up 6 on Georgia. So we tried, Georgia. We tried, but not looking like it's going to happen. So. And then there's not really a lot of. We already know where Vanderbilt Ole Miss is going to be seated. I guess number one we already know pretty much. The Missouri. What's the thought on Missouri Ole Miss? How does that pan out?
Well, I'll tell you what you hope for. You hope for Alabama to get that 5 because then you get that matchup we've just been dreaming about and hyping about for weeks.
Right.
Is the
Alabama Missouri? I forgot
the chance for Alabama Missouri in a third time. It's like the Rocky movies.
Yeah, well, that could be the case. We know Vanderbilt's playing Georgia. We know Missouri's playing Ole Miss. Everything as of this recording still yet to be determined. Again, on the matchups, that is. But we know the 1 through 4 set. It's just that crowded middle. We'll get played out here after we, a little bit later on. But, yeah, what an interesting – we knew it was going to be a wild Saturday. And, just in these games we talked about, it has been wild. And, yeah, I mean, it's something. So – we got a lot of stuff to do over the next several weeks, don't we? We got a lot to cover.
Well,
we've already started prepping for our draft for our East-West All-Star teams. So.
We have. I mean, I want to do a little more justice to the Kentucky game here. Sheboy was just dominant from the tip, 27 and 15. Although Castleton in his own right goes for 23 and 11. Wheeler was pretty good for them today. Grady was your typical Kellen Grady. Didn't take a lot of shots, but hit them. They didn't get a lot out of Washington. But, I mean, again, it's like we talked about Tennessee. So many guys just any given night. You know what else we didn't talk about was good grief, the pregame.
Yes. See,
I've gone completely blank.
I'm not going to lie to you here, okay? I thought we had already talked about Kentucky and Florida. The reason why is because we started recording right after the game, so I'm thinking like it's sort of that sequence thing where I'm like, okay, well, we
And then I
just watched
goofed
this,
up.
and now I'm like, oh man. So we haven't talked about it yet. So
Keontae Johnson. Yeah.
Keontae Johnson. So that, yeah, I'm glad you brought it up because again, my mind is just this is what happens. Look, this is what you get on the weekends with us, Chris and Blake on the weekends. It's just like everything runs together. But yes, I just realized we hadn't talked about this game in detail. The Keontae Johnson thing beforehand, one of the coolest things I've ever seen in college basketball. Period. Like that was great because again, that is such a unique situation, a unique circumstance. We all know what happened last year. We all know how scary it was, and for them to do that, for him to be in full uniform out there on the floor, ball in hand, Kentucky, give Kentucky credit too, man, because it's like that's great from Cal and all his players. Like it's one of those things that was absolutely the perfect thing to do for someone like that. Because as I keep saying, remember, this guy was the preseason pick for SEC Player of the Year last year. Like we're thinking he is about to just, and I had said, and people know who followed my work before what we do here. I've talked about him since he stepped on campus there. I said, I think this guy's one of the most underrated, undervalued players in the league, and eventually he's going to break out. And it's like, I was so loved him getting all that recognition last year going into the season. I'm like, yes, like he is finally getting what he deserves. And then of course we know what happened, but that was the coolest thing. Yeah, no doubt. As for the game, like we said, Sheboy was fantastic. Davion Mintz just chips in his 10. It's just like that guy at this point. I keep talking about him, but like he is so valuable to that team. I know all the other guys in front of him are going to get the attention, but he brings so much value there in just the different things he can do on the floor, and it's not always represented in the stat sheet. But outside of that, Florida Castleton was great, but you expected that. I just, Florida's gonna have a tough time winning when Tyree Apple only scores 6, right? I think that's something we talked about, and
Yeah.
no one else really had kind of that breakout game you wanted. But again, I think you give Kentucky credit for that. That's a really good defensive team, as we talked about, and they made things difficult at times. And Florida only goes 3 of 20 something from three, so that didn't help. So yeah, I mean, just kind of we figured Kentucky was going to win this game, and I thought that they did it about how you would have expected here, even though we kind of said everything's kind of on the line for Florida here, but it's just a challenge playing this team. So yeah, really good win for Kentucky.
We kind of forget about Keontae Johnson and the impact it's had him not being out there because he's been out for so long. It's been 15 months now. But how differently are things going for Mike White in Florida the last 2 years if that doesn't happen? I mean, look, I may be on an island. I think Mike White is underrated as a coach. Number one, they're never bad, which is hard to do unless you're. And even Kentucky's had some years they weren't very good. I mean, they're few and far between, but last year was one of them. The NIT team of 14 or whatever that was too. I mean, it's not a given that you just are just not going to be meh at some point. And I look at that and you lose a guy that was that valuable to them, and I just wonder how differently does it go for them.
No, I mean that certainly plays a part. There's no question. I think it's just again fair unfair. It's the expectation that's been set, and Florida is not a team that is used to being in the middle. I mean, really, let's think about that. For the longest time, we mentioned it. It was always Kentucky, right? But then it was always Kentucky and Florida. Florida had become that team that was right there with Kentucky, and you just expected it all the time. For the most part, whenever Billy Donovan was there, and as I always say, it's stepping into a great man's shoes. That is not something you always want to do. But if you're Mike White, you're not going to turn down the opportunity to coach Florida. But it could be a lot different. But we'll see if they play their way into the tournament. They'll have their opportunities, I think, because no matter where they're slotted, if they win their first game, they're going to get a top 14. So, well, now you just have to play your way in because I think that's kind of what it comes down to. Is today would have been a big step, but didn't get it. So now I think you have to win multiple games to get in, and as we said, you hope for the hardest possible draw because you gotta add something to that resume. So
I'm going to give some advice to any young coaches out there watching. If you're
Oh
going
boy.
for a coaching vacancy and the court is named after the guy that comes before you, don't take the job. You're probably going to be set up for, even if you're good, people are not going to appreciate you. No, by the way, Florida, if I'm right, Florida's locked in that 7-10 game. It's going to get Tennessee in game 2, which I guess it doesn't matter because whoever you play in game 2 is one of those
Right.
opportunities to get a big win. But
Yeah.
I don't even know if I'm right. I've done this so many times. My eyes have crossed. I have no confidence in what's written down just because these are so tricky, and you miss one thing, you miss everything. But
That's why
anyway,
I leave it to you. That's why I've been out. That's why I just came in from walking the dog, and you've been in here crunching the numbers. So,
well,
yeah,
I'm the dumb one who tries it because you screw something up, you put yourself out there, you get yelled at, and so like, why
I
did I
know.
do all this?
That's why I always hate sharing stats on Twitter because I usually get it wrong. Like I'm just gonna be completely honest. Like I usually get it wrong, but then I go back and I'm like, oh, like well you can't edit it, so I'm like, yeah, just put it underneath it and say, oh, it's this. But yeah, stats are. That's why I'm talking to you. That's why I'm not working in any mathematical sort of profession because I don't think I would make it very
Well,
well in
in
it.
addition to basketball, I've had my eye on baseball a little bit today too, and last night I stayed up and watched Tennessee, Texas, and part of Vandy, Hawaii.
I was gonna see if you were gonna be up to 1:30 a.m. watching the Vandy
I was
Hawaii.
going to, and then I've gotten over a cold. I'm sure you can hear all the sniffling on the broadcast. I literally was getting over a cold on Thursday, and I swear to God now, for some reason I haven't licked it. I thought it was over it, or I think I'm getting allergies have kicked in now. So I've been
Mm.
sniffling all day, and it's just I hate it. Sneezing. I'm shocked to have not sneezed on the podcast today, but I'm sure that's coming.
Oh boy.
Was out with my son
Well,
this morning at baseball practice. It's dusty field. They're kicking up dirt. That probably didn't help. But if you can count on one thing from me in March, it's I'm gonna get sick. Like if you are listening, write this down. It's March 5th. March 5th, 2022. There's a 50-50 chance I'm going to be sick this time next year. It happens every year. Blake, I got married in March. I hadn't had the flu in over 20 years. Do you know what happened to me on my honeymoon?
I'd like to make a prediction. I'm gonna say that you got sick.
I got the flu
Mm.
on my
Yeah.
honeymoon. I mean,
Mm.
every March this happens to me, and I just cannot shake it. And so I apologize. I've gone back and listened to the broadcast. I'm trying to hit the mute button when I'm not talking because I know I'm going to be sniffling and all kinds of stuff. And sometimes what happens is I forget I've hit the mute button. And then I'm talking and you can hear me, but the audience can't hear me.
Yeah.
So I'm having to play this game where I've got my finger on the mouse pad constantly trying to balance between, all right, I don't want to make a mistake where you don't
Yeah.
hear me, but I don't want to have you hear me doing this the whole time because it's just, man, I love March. It's my favorite month of the year, except for that.
Well, that's all right. We're going to help you out. We got a lot of great people that will help us out here as we get through March because it's going to be crazy, like we said. And, we talked about doing some live streams. We are going to do some of those, but we want to make sure you guys know about those in advance. So we'll figure that out over the next several days and kind of give you our schedule for next week with the tournament and everything. I mean, again, if you think we've done a lot already, next week's gonna we're just gonna give you as much as we can next week. That's our job. That's what we're gonna try to do. So there will be a lot of videos next week, and also, if you follow me on Twitter, and again, Chris will participate in some of these as well, but we are going to start doing some of these Twitter Spaces because those are they're very interactive, and I know some of you guys have really wanted more of that because again, I know you watch our videos, you comment, we respond. That's great, but these are kind of real time interactive ways too, other than just the live streams we're going to do here. So make sure you're following us on Twitter. You can follow, all three accounts, Chris's Twitter account, my Twitter account. They're both on the screen here. You can see them right now. And you can follow our Southeastern 14 Twitter account at 14 Southeastern. Just flip it, 14 Southeastern. That's the Twitter account. We're going to start doing some of these. And as of right now, and again, if you watch this early, you'll get to get in on this. I'm going to try to do one of these tonight around 8:30. That'll be around halftime of the Texas A&M Mississippi State game. So come on in. Look, it could be a fun time. It could be a complete disaster, but hey, maybe that's our new tagline. Is that a shirt too? Southeastern 14, the podcast. It could be a complete disaster. It could be fun. You never know which. So maybe that's too long, but we can make it work somehow. So,
the truth is we haven't done something live yet because we don't trust ourselves not to screw it up. And by us, I'm pointing to me because I'm the guy doing all the tech stuff.
That's why we're going to try to do the Twitter stuff first, because there's a lot less you can screw up on Twitter.
Yeah. Well, leave it to me.
So, we'll see. But we're going to have some fun with those. The Twitter spaces are basically, just think of it as just like you're just hanging out with your friends, right? Like it's a very casual, fun conversation. So I'm going to try one of those tonight, 8:30. Make sure PM Central. By the way, that is going to be, Chris, that's going to be 6:30 Pacific time for those of you out west. But yes, we're going to try those, and we may start doing those more frequently too. So that way, again, if you're someone, you still watch our videos, but if you're very active on Twitter, hey, that just gives you another way to interact with us. So yeah, be sure to check that out, and we'll see what we can do with those too. So
my nightmare scenario is I have to figure out seeds and tip-off times at the same time in different zones, and not mess up the broadcast. So
I'm gonna make sure that in the Twitter space tonight, I'm gonna find someone. I'm gonna be like, look, I want you to ask a question as soon as I start this thing about what is the scenario. If Mississippi State and Texas A&M going to be tied at halftime, I'm gonna say, I need you to ask, what is the scenario here, depending on who wins and how is the tiebreaker. No, we'll see. So.
Yes. I'm gonna be keeping my eye on basketball and some. This was a great baseball weekend, man. I hate that they coincided. The one thing I am glad about, it seemed like every year the SEC tournament happened. Well, no, that's right. Okay, it's the same format. It's always the SEC regular season play starts the same weekend as March Madness, so it's kind of marginalized in terms of interest, unless you just like baseball and don't like basketball.
Yeah.
But anyway,
we got it all covered. So
yeah, send us your corn nuts, your zero bars, your Kleenex, and coming soon your questions.
Goodness gracious!
I have a note on zero bars. Should I save that for a future show?
We'll save that for later. That's an after dark thing. Yeah.
I know everybody cannot wait to know what I have uncovered with zero bars.
SEC tournament, it's on the way, folks. Got a lot coming. Hit that subscribe button.
A lot coming. Like so much that we haven't even figured out how we're going to do it. But we're going to do it. We're going to do a lot of it. And I promise you will not get more SEC basketball info. I'm going all Tim Tebow here. Nobody will try harder than us, or however that went.
Yep.
All right.
We'll do it.
Thanks for watching. We will see you again probably on Monday unless we decide differently. We got bracketology coming next week.
East-West All-Star, all SEC picks.
We'll wrap up these games. Picks. It's all here.
Maybe we'll wrap up these games. We'll see.
And maybe when we're done, we'll make the T-shirt. Yeah. All right. Thanks for watching and listening. Again, we'll see you back on Monday.